but congratulate you for being shortlisted. We will have a brief interaction with you just to try and get to know you better beyond your CV. And so we will be giving you time to do that. But in the meantime, let me ask my colleagues to introduce themselves. Linda, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. My name is 𝐈𝐬𝐫𝐚𝐞𝐥, and I serve this panel as a Vice Chair. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you for this interview.
Bwana Ruhu, jambo. Ninaitwa Bwana Andrew Tanui, mwanakamati wa chopo hili la uteuzi, na karibu.
Good morning, Israel.
Good morning to you.
𝐸𝐤𝐫𝐚𝐞𝐥, a member of the panel.
All right. Nice to meet you.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
My name is Adam Solo, a member of the selection panel.
Thank you, Professor.
Good morning, Jacob.
Good morning to you. I'll accept Jacob as well.
Yes.
Since it's the other version of Israel.
Yes.
All right.
My name is Nicodemus Bore.
Okay.
Member of the panel. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
My name is Fatuma Ali Saman, a member of this panel. Please feel welcome.
Thank you, Fatuma.
Good morning, Mheshimiwa Ruhu.
Good morning
Na
to you.
karibu sana. My name is 𝐈𝐬𝐫𝐚𝐞𝐥, and I'm a member of the selection panel.
Thank you, Dr. 𝐸𝐤𝐫𝐚𝐞𝐥.
Good morning, Ruhu.
Good morning to you.
My name is Evans Misati. I'm a member of this selection panel, and we welcome you to this interaction session.
Thank you, Mr. Misati.
Now we will come to you, Honorable Ruhu, to ask that you introduce yourself briefly in about 5 or so minutes. Give us your profile. Let us know whether you belong to any society, professional group, and if you have received any honors as you have served. And why, at 37, you want to get into this difficult job? Welcome.
All right. Thank you, Chair. So, as you've heard, my name is 𝐈𝐤𝐫𝐚𝐞𝐥 Ruhu. I'm currently serving Kenyans and beloved country as a magistrate. I was employed or appointed a magistrate back then in the year 2018. That was December 2018. I happened to be the first advocate actually from my home county. My home county happens to be Tana River County. So I happen to be the first advocate or lawyer in the history of this country, to ever been appointed a magistrate. So I happen to be the only magistrate from that county to date.
And you want to deny them that privilege?
I'm very ambitious. I wish to rise all the way. That's why I'm here today. So in the magistracy, I've served in different capacity, including my current capacity. I think my leadership skills and abilities have been appreciated by my employers. I was appointed a head of station, so I'm currently heading a station in Lamu County, where I'm in charge of now the staff working under me. As head of station, I also have other duties, including as an AIE holder. As an AIE holder, that means I'm in charge of the accounts. I'm supposed to, whatever has been appropriated to the station, I'm supposed to spend whatever has been appropriated to the station in accordance with the Public Finance Management Act, in accordance with the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, and of course in accordance with the supreme law, that is the Constitution of Kenya. So as a head of station, I also engage in other duties, including meeting stakeholders. We have what we call the Court Users Committee. So in my capacity as head of station, I'm supposed to meet other actors from other state agencies and even the private entities. So for example, I'm able to interact with other actors, state actors, including the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, the Probation and Aftercare Services Department, the Children's Services. We also meet human rights organization, CBOs, CSOs. So that is in my capacity as a head of station and a chairperson of now the Court Users Committee at my station level. So apart from that, my leadership abilities have also been tested elsewhere, still in the magistracy. For example, when I was appointed a magistrate, that was in 2019, I was elected by my colleagues as the vice chairperson. We usually have regional caucuses. So that time I was stationed in Bungoma County. At that time, just after being appointed, my colleagues elected me to become a vice chairperson of the Western Caucus. But I was transferred shortly after to Kitui. So I was not able to do much in that capacity because now I moved to another region. So apart from the magistracy, I've also worked in other government entities. I don't know whether I qualify to call myself a career civil servant at my age, but I've been fortunate to be in public service from the moment I stepped out of law school. So the other entities I've worked for, my immediate employer before I joined the bench was the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, where I worked as a forensic investigations officer. And during that time, I was able to actually experience firsthand, the issue of corruption. It's such a big issue in our beloved country. So at least I had firsthand experience in matters corruption and how to deal with this dragon that we try so hard to slay, this dragon of corruption. So before joining the EACC, I had also worked for the county government of Mombasa in different capacities. At that youthful age, at that time I was still in my 20s. Despite my young age, I was fortunate to have several promotions. I started as a legal officer in the County Assembly of Mombasa, where my duties included drafting bills and related issues, so mostly the legislative aspect of county assemblies, now that we all know that the legislative authority is vested in the Constitution, it vests in the county government, is vested in the county assemblies. So apart from working as a legal officer to the County Assembly of Mombasa, I was also able to work in the county executive in different capacities. I was promoted to a deputy director in charge of policy and partnership. I also had a short stint there before I moved to the office of the county attorney. I was again promoted to becoming the director in charge of litigation, that is in the office of the county attorney, Mombasa County Government. So I believe all these promotions are not by chance, despite back then still being in my 20s. I believe they demonstrate my leadership abilities. So as a professional, I'm a member of the Law Society of Kenya. I'm also a member of the Kenya Magistrates and Judges Association. And by virtue of being an LSK member, I'm also a member of the East Africa Magistrate and Judges Association by virtue of being a magistrate in Kenya. We also have our own professional caucuses within the judiciary, which I also subscribe to. So that should be a brief background. Now that I only had 5 minutes, that should be a brief background on my career so far in public service. I don't know if you wish me to go into the academic aspect, my qualifications.
Maybe mention that in a minute.
Okay. As regards my qualifications, I possess a postgraduate diploma in law from the Kenya School of Law and a Bachelor of Laws from the Catholic University of Eastern Africa. I'm currently still pursuing my master's and specializing in law, democracy, and governance. I think I will leave it at that.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to go all the way to primary school.
Thank you very much. I want to invite Linda to also ask you some questions. Madam Linda, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Mheshimiwa, with your experience as a magistrate, you also worked for EACC, also in the field of legal profession. What do you bring to the table?
All right. As a magistrate and having worked for different government agencies, I will say, in fact, having worked for the three arms of government, because if you look at the county assembly, this is the legislative arm of the government, although at the county government level, it's still the legislative arm of the government. Then you look at the EACC, it can easily qualify as the executive arm of the government. Then now the third arm of the government, which is the judiciary, my current position. So what I bring to the table is that unique experience. I'm lucky to have that dynamism through my exposure now to all these arms of government. So I know not so many Kenyans have that privilege of having worked for all the arms of the government, especially at a youthful age. So I bring dynamism, I bring that experience, and which I believe will be favorable to this position that I've applied for.
The IEBC working environment is a high-pressure one. Have you, in your career journey, found yourself in a high-pressure environment whereby your leadership skills have been put to test, they have been tried, and you have overcome? And if so, please elaborate to this panel.
Thank you for that question. I draw a lot of similarities between my current job, that is the magistracy or the judiciary. I draw a lot of similarities between the judiciary and the IEBC. I find that they have a lot of similarities in the sense that these are, as you have put it, these are very high-pressure jobs. These are jobs that many a times, no matter what decision you make, there's always that possibility of a whole half being not happy with your decision. So for example, in the judiciary, as we preside over these cases, there are always two parties competing. So the decision you make, at some point, chances are high that one party will win and the other party will not win that case. So you'll hear that the losing side, I don't want to call them the losing side, but the party that does not win the case, many a times they won't be happy with that decision. Maybe they might even have their own reasons. So if you compare that with IEBC, it's a very high-stake, high-pressure job. We have very protracted elections in Kenya. So no matter what decision the IEBC makes, or no matter who wins, there's always that party who has lost that election. So it now comes to a matter of personality. There are those who concede defeat. Unfortunately, there are those who don't concede defeat. And to me, the biggest problem with Kenya, I think we need to inculcate a culture of sportsmanship. You know, in sports, for example, today you have Arsenal playing Real Madrid. Whichever team loses, they concede defeat. But in Kenya politics, many a times the losers don't concede defeat. If only we can inculcate that culture of sportsmanship in our elections, so that if the elections are free and fair and credible, if you have lost, just concede defeat so that we move on as a country.
Now, have you ever had a complaint against yourself as you are working as a magistrate?
Yes, working as a magistrate, sometimes complaints are inevitable. So I'll be honest with this committee. I've had complaints raised against me. They were handled by the Judiciary Ombudsman. So you find that some of these complaints, somebody, instead of appealing, they write a complaint. So the losing party, as I put it, somebody has lost a case. So because they have lost, they feel you are biased. So if they feel biased, that you are biased in your decision, they write a complaint to JSC against you. But all these complaints were dismissed. They were of no merit.
Thank you for your honesty.
Thank you. You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, so that we can allow you to travel and watch Arsenal and Madrid. Carol, do you want to ask some questions also?
Yes, Chair. Good morning. Good morning, still morning. Would you please explain to us the mandate of the IEBC in relation to the recall of representatives in Parliament? Representatives in Parliament.
So when it comes to the mandate of the IEBC, that is in relation to the recall of, you've limited it to the members of Parliament or just even other elective bodies?
Members of Parliament.
Okay, so for members of Parliament, our Constitution has that provision for recalling actually members of Parliament, although we have not seen anybody invoke it yet. But we have a constitutional provision on that, so that once it's invoked, that means the IEBC has to nullify now that representation by the party who has been recalled. So if you are recalled, that means now your constituency now has to seek we have to go for fresh elections because you have recalled your member of parliament, so that means you have to find a replacement.
Can the recalled member of parliament participate in the new recall election?
Going by the provisions of the constitution, there's no express provision that now bars that member of parliament who has been recalled from participating now in a fresh elections. I think these are some of the lacunas now maybe which we might need some legislative reform if that was the intention and the spirit of the constitution.
So have you engaged in any case law or any decisions from the High Court on the recall provisions? Are you familiar with any case that has sought to challenge or has sought to, interpret Article 104 of the Constitution and the statutory provisions?
I will be honest, I've not engaged any such case. I've not interacted with such a case.
So back to the mandate of the IBC. What then is the mandate of the IBC in relation to boundaries delimitation?
All right, as regards boundaries delimitation, that's expressly provided under Article 89 of the Constitution, and it gives now how the boundary delimitation has to be done. There are those timelines, the timelines which were supposed to be met, the 8-year period, 8 to 12 years period. Unfortunately, we are now beyond that timeline. We are actually, that's why you hear people saying we are now in a constitutional crisis. Although to me, we are not in a constitutional crisis because at the end of the day, it's all about the jurisprudence of this country. So I believe this is now room for Kenya to grow its jurisprudence. Now that we have not met the constitutional timelines provided for the delimitation, the deadline was 2024. That was last year. What next? So to me, that's a ground for now expanding our jurisprudence as a country, and that is why we have organizations like the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, who have also petitioned now the Supreme Court just to interpret.
So in the Constitution, what are some of the factors or the criteria that guides IBC? Supposedly, IBC was within the time frame and is conducting boundaries delimitation. What is the criteria that the Constitution sets out?
Okay. So when it comes to the criteria, of course, the IBC now, as guided by the Constitution and Article 89, we have to look at we have to calculate that population quota. So the census, the last census of this country matters. So because now we use that to do that calculation to arrive at the population quota. So at the moment, we have 290 constituencies. So going by our last population census, so we'll use now, if we are 40 million Kenyans, we'll now divide 40 million Kenyans, you divide 40 million Kenyans with 290. Now you get the population quota. So that comes to 100 and something thousand. So that means there is that, now that is the defined population quota. But the law, again, the Constitution gives that allowance. Again, there's that 40% allowance for sparsely populated areas and cities. Then for the other regions, it's 30%. So there's allowance of a plus and a minus as regards population
So
quota.
my last question would be, what challenges then do you foresee IBC encountering in the context of boundaries delimitation, and how would you propose to address those challenges outside the challenge of the time frame? Any other challenge mentioned, like 4?
So when it comes, so outside, you said outside the challenges for the time frames.
Time frame.
So when it comes to those challenges, you realize that our country, when it comes to some of these elective posts, we are not used to, for example, now losing constituencies, because now if the IEBC is to carry the delimitation exercise, that means there's a possibility that some constituencies will be put in place, new ones, but there's also a possibility of some constituencies now being eliminated. So for example, the protected one, in the last delimitation exercise in 2012, there were around 27 constituencies now which did not meet the population quota. So these constituencies were actually supposed to be now eliminated. So, but of course, through some political protection, somehow they were protected and given an extension and a timeline. So some of the challenges, that's what I was trying to explain. So some of the challenges we might have to face Kenyans and find a way of now making them accept that sometimes it comes to that your constituency, your beloved constituency, does not meet the population quota, so it has to go, or it has to be merged with another constituency. So I think that's the biggest challenge. Most politicians will not want to lose a constituency, especially the ones holding office.
Supposedly you are successful and you're now a member of the IBC. How do you propose to address the challenge that you have identified?
How we'll address that challenge? I think civic education is important because you see now we are a country guided by the rule of law. So if these are constitutional provisions, there's nothing much we can do but just to make the people accept that now these are legal provisions which we must abide with. So I think just a lot of civic education so that Kenyans now get to understand this issue of delimitation better. I think civil education will play a big role.
Thank you so much, Mr. 𝐈𝐬𝐫𝐚𝐞𝐥. I wish you the best. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I invite FCS 𝐸𝐬𝐫𝐚𝐞𝐥 to also ask you some questions, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mheshimiwa Ruhu, during elections, all the time, you find that there is a problem, a challenge that you find most in the reports of observers, that in fact election offenses, such as even campaigning around the polling station, voter bribery, and other electoral irregularities are committed right in front of the police that guard the polling stations. And in fact, I can tell you through my experience that it is rare that you find any of these offenses anybody being arrested. And so we have serious problems that I would like to request you to address. One of them is use of public resources for campaigning, and the issue of voter bribery, the issue of intimidating opponents, and so on, those irregularities. If you are successful and you get to the IEBC, what are you going to do different from what commissioners and IEBC has done throughout the electoral history of Kenya to actually ensure that these election offenses are dealt with in real time? Thank you.
All right. It's an interesting question. Thank you for that question. Let me give the example of the judiciary or other state entities. You said there are offenses which occur, but now it depends on we have different state actors who are involved now. If you are to bring somebody to book, it's a whole chain reaction now. We have so many actors involved, all the way from the ODPP, the DCI, and other entities. So you have to find a way of now ensuring there is synergy between all these actors, because now, you see, some of these offices, they are more of independent offices. So if an election offense is committed in the presence of a police officer, and this police officer now is well aware of his duty now, he even has that duty now to arrest, but somehow this police officer does not arrest the suspect. So, and this police officer also enjoys some form of independence. So in my interpretation,
they actually say that
yes,
their work at the polling station is to guard
yes,
the polling station and the election officials. They cannot be able to arrest people. So okay, what measures additional measures would you put in place to actually have those matters addressed?
All right, so from that point of view, I think now there is need for more legislative reform so that we propose amendments to the IEBC Act, for example, so that we have very clear provisions that now mandate these police officers to assist the IEBC where they're supposed to assist us. Otherwise, if the law is silent, because now at least if we have a clear legal provision on that, then you can use that now to make somebody accountable for either acting or failing to act. I think now the legislative reforms will be the best way to go, given such a scenario.
And what would be your role in that, as if you are fortunate enough to be appointed as a commissioner?
If I'm fortunate enough now to be appointed as a commissioner, I will use my past experience as a legislative drafter. I think you have seen from my certificates, I have quite a number of legislative drafting certificates. I've attended a lot of courses, so at least I have that background in legislative drafting, I think, which I can now capitalize on so that to assist the Commission to come up with some of the best reforms in terms of the current legislation.
Thank you very much, Mheshimiwa Ruhu, and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I want to ask FCPA, Tanwi, to ask you some questions. Please, Tanwi.
Thank you, Chair. Bwana Ruhu, you told us you are a magistrate. What level of magistracy are you currently?
I'm a senior resident magistrate.
Senior resident magistrate.
Yes. And
above that is which one?
Okay. So when it comes to the magistracy, we have the different ranks.
No, above
it is principal magistrate, then senior principal, then chief magistrate at the very top.
So senior resident and then?
And then principal magistrate, then senior principal magistrate, then chief magistrate, the apex. Maybe I should also mention that it's a rare occasion for senior resident magistrates to become head of station. So I'm one of the very few senior resident magistrates who have been entrusted with that responsibility. In fact, if you look at most head of stations, they're usually at chief magistrate, senior principal magistrate, so I don't take it for granted.
Yeah, that takes me to my question. Your role as 𝐈𝐬𝐲𝐨, and also you told us what is your role at CUC committees, Court Users Committee? What is your role there?
I'm the chairperson of the Court Users Committee.
Yeah, chairperson. So those are actually responsibilities for head of station, isn't it?
Yes.
Which you acknowledge that given your ranking, you are privileged to be in charge of such responsibilities.
Correct.
Now, of what benefit is your experience and the CUCs can be for IEBC if you are to be a commissioner? Can CUCs be of any benefit to IEBC, or your experience at CUC level be of any value to IEBC if given an opportunity as a commissioner?
Okay. Thank you, CPA. So from my experience now as a chairperson of a Court Users Committee, I will say the Court Users Committee can be of monumental benefit to the IEBC, because this committee is where we have all these actors now coming together and discussing pertinent issues regarding the administration of justice. So many a times, some of the challenges, because any organization has its challenges, so many a times, most of the challenges we face as a judiciary, we usually address them at the CUC level. You see, sometimes when you're on this side of the bench, you might not know what you are doing is wrong, or you are not able to review yourself. But from this Court Users Committee, it now gives us a platform also for review, so that we have all these actors coming together and now pointing out some of the weaknesses maybe within the judiciary. Once they are pointed out, we are able to address them. Then if there are any other challenges regarding the administration of justice now with the other actors, so that's where now we also get an opportunity to raise it with the other actors. So if the prosecution are not prosecuting their cases well, for example, you can find a ground. If the police officers are not doing their job, maybe there is a miscarriage of justice because an investigator did not
I appreciate the role of COCs, but I'm
Okay.
saying how will that be of benefit, or how can it help
The
in the
IEBC.
management of IEBC?
Yes. Now, when it comes to the IEBC, we can also replicate that. We can borrow that kind of arrangement, because you see now the IEBC also has to work with other actors. The example given by Dr. Koki, you see, you have police officers informing the IEBC that their role is only just to make sure everything is safe. They cannot make those arrests. So if we can create a forum which brings all these actors involved in the election process, then I think we'll be addressing most of the challenges being faced by IEBC. So I feel it's high time IEBC replicates that, so that you bring on board all the actors involved in the election process outside and beyond IEBC.
My question, second question relates to your role also as an AIE holder. And you did mention that you ensure compliance with PFM Act and Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act. And my question is that IEBC frequently has audit queries. Then how would your experience as an AIE holder be of value to IEBC in ensuring that there is compliance, more so in terms of Auditor General recommendations on issues of public finance management and public procurement? Thank you.
So when it comes to matters public finance and public procurement, you realize, let me give the example of procurement. If you look at most of the scandals, corruption scandals this country has faced, mega corruption scandals running into billions, you'll realize that public procurement now is the main conduit through which public funds are stolen, if I may put it that way. So my take on matters finance, accounts, and procurement, we must stick and adhere to the provisions of the Public Finance Management Act and Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act. Because somehow, you see, Kenyans sometimes, most Kenyans, they find a way of defeating the system. If you look at our laws, some of our laws are very progressive. We have very good legal provisions, but we also have that culture of just trying to beat the system. You always trying to find a loophole to exploit. So my take will be strict adherence to the provisions of these laws and their enabling regulations.
Thank you, and I wish you well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Bwana Misati, do you want to ask some questions, please?
Thanks so much, Chair. Bwana Ru, now I want to take you back to where we were in the Constitution, Article 88 rather, for H, which requires that IEBC facilitates the observation missions, monitoring and evaluation of elections. I just want us to focus on evaluation of elections. From your understanding, we have always had the IEBC release post-election evaluation reports. From where you sit, do you think that is right, from the interpretation of that itself?
Thank you for that question. So my understanding of that constitutional provision, if you look at national values and principles and Article 10, they include accountability. So all these state agencies, state corporations, public bodies, they are all accountable to the common mwananchi. So by releasing evaluation reports, in my understanding, it's one form of accountability to the members of the public who have now given IEBC the mandate to conduct these elections. So it's very important, and I think it's a very good provision to be accountable to the people.
But the provision clearly states that they are supposed to facilitate. You see, they're the users. They're the people who have conducted elections. So for us to have an independent, we can maybe give it a different name if it means end of election report or whatever. But when you talk about evaluating the way they conducted, because this is the same problem we have been having. If we do things the same way and expect different results, then I don't think, what is your view on the same? Because they are supposed to facilitate. Because how do they, for instance, how do they spot out the mistakes they have if they were the actual people who are doing it?
Right. So my take on that is I will use the example of the court users committee again. So if we are to facilitate this evaluation, it's only fair that we allow now a third party to evaluate us now as IEBC, if we are given that mandate. Otherwise, you cannot be the referee in your own match. So I think it's a good provision so that you get now a neutral perspective on whether you have what you have done is good enough or not. So that if there are any failures or laxities, they can also be pointed out.
So if given an opportunity and you are a commissioner, what will you do in that line? Because you will get induction from the IPC secretariat, they tell you how they do things, and part of that will be like, this is how we do things, reports. So is there any changes you will make if you are given an opportunity and you are a commissioner?
So if given that opportunity now to serve as a commissioner, of course, I will first look at now the current status, so that if the system is not broken, there is no need to fix what is not broken. What you can do now is just improve. So I look at what is the current practice, so that if it has been working, then we can just now make it better. But if the system has not been very efficient, now we'll be forced to now to adopt new measures in terms of evaluation and facilitating evaluation.
Thanks so much. Now, last question. If my memory serves me right, the constituency is protected there 26, not 27. I don't know. Could you please name any 5 of them, the ones who are protected?
So if I'm to name 5 of those protected constituencies, I think we have Mbalambala constituency. This one, I'll just be honest, I'll pass. I don't know them often, the 5 of them. That one I'll pass.
Thanks so much. I wish you well. Over to you, Chair.
Okay, I want to invite Fatuma to also ask some questions. Ms. Fatuma, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Roho, would you kindly share with the panel what measures you will use if you become an IEBC member to ensure, to check if the stakeholder engagement is working? Because it is important that the IEBC stakeholder engagement or other strategy that they are using works. So what measures would you use, or what mechanisms would you use to check and see if it is working?
Thank you, Fatuma. So if I'll be fortunate now to be appointed as commissioner, I'll play a very proactive role now in following up on matters stakeholder engagement. Just the way we do it in the judiciary, we always make sure we keep close contact with our stakeholders. We also have an open door policy, so I will be very proactive and make sure I always do these follow-ups to make sure that whatever engagements we have with our stakeholders are meeting our aspirations as a commission. So I'll take a proactive approach. So some of the measures I'll use, for example, I'll make sure that we can do follow-up so that in terms of compliance, you see, when you engage the stakeholders, they are able to identify a lot of issues through those engagements. So once they identify these issues, you're able to do a follow-up as the commission now. Maybe if there was a problem somewhere, a gap somewhere, a lacuna somewhere, as the commission now address that issue, so that now we go to the root of the problem. So we'll have an open door policy. We'll be giving feedback to the stakeholders, so that whatever engagements we have, we'll always make sure that we give them feedback that this issue was raised in one of our forums, and we have addressed it in this way, we have addressed it in another way, so that we keep them close. I think I'll use a feedback mechanism, so that we always make sure we are in touch with the stakeholders.
Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Okay, I invite 𝐸𝐫𝐚𝐞𝐥 to ask some questions, please.
Thank you, Chair. Israel, from your CV, you've stated that you worked as a magistrate from 2018 to date, and you have the privilege of serving as a head of station, though your level is not. It's a privilege that you have been given by the judiciary.
Correct.
And you are responsible for ensuring resources are utilized in accordance with the PFM Act, Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, and other financial regulations.
Correct.
This is a very crucial asset that you will have to bring to the Commission if given that opportunity to serve. What do you think are the risks at IEBC on matters procurement?
Okay, thank you for that question. So when it comes to matters procurement, as I had mentioned it earlier, the biggest risk is usually corruption. And that's why I mentioned that all the scandals of billions lost that the country has lost, all these scandals, it's usually corruption, it's usually procurement related, 99% procurement related. So for me, I think corruption is the biggest risk when it comes to procurement.
Any other risks? Maybe mention one or two others.
So other risks that may come with procurement may be incompetence. You can have members of staff who are not competent. Yes, so if they are not competent, that is why they are not able to follow some of these procedures. So incompetence can be one of them. They can also have political interference. Yes, so political interference is also another big risk when it comes to procurement. Not just political interference, but just interference from outsiders.
So in your role as a magistrate and as a leader of your station, can you share an example of a leadership challenge that you faced in your career and how you navigated it to ensure fairness and accountability?
So one of the biggest challenge faced as a magistrate, I think, is you see now you are forced to become, the nature of our job makes you to become more of an introvert. When I joined the judiciary, I was a very outgoing person. So my first posting, I'll just be free with anyone. But I realized if I'm seen having lunch with you, then you end up appearing in my court. I'm now accused of being compromised by you. So as a magistrate, you cannot even hang out with your professional peers. An example is the prosecutors, for example. You spend the whole day with them in court. He's an advocate, you are an advocate. But now if you step out of that courtroom together and an accused person sees the two of you together, he'll now accuse you of being biased and being compromised by the prosecutor. Same with the advocates who appear before us. These are professional peers. But If I meet Advocate so-and-so outside now, I just have to say hi and we leave it at that. I can't afford to hang out with him because he has matters before me. So when it comes to the judiciary, you actually lose your social life. So you are forced to just confine to yourself, which I think was one of the biggest adjustments I had to make. I don't know if I've answered your question or I got you wrong, but it's one of the biggest challenges I've faced now as a judicial officer.
So you have not faced any leadership challenge that required you to have a decision that was...
Yes, I can also give another example. I'll give the example of some of the people who work with us. You are presiding over cases. I'll give a personal experience. One day I find myself having lunch somewhere, then somebody just approaches me and tells me, Mheshimiwa, nimeshukuru sana, ile naona soda yangu ilifika. So I become curious and ask him which soda is this you're talking about, because I couldn't even recall his face. So I took his details, I noted down somewhere, I followed up. So on following up, I found that I'd made a decision in his favor. You see, some of the people who work with us sometimes they can predict some of these matters after working for the judiciary for very many years. So apparently one of my assistants had solicited for something from him, and he was paid, and he used my name. I was not aware, and by God's grace, I just encountered that person by coincidence. So I did what I had to do. That time I was still under somebody else. I reported to my in charge the incident, and action was taken against that staff.
Thank you very much, and all the best.
Professor Adams-Olow, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just like my colleague Bore, let me call you Israel.
Thank you.
And you just finished your answer to him by saying, by God's grace. I've also named my son Israel, so...
I'm happy to hear that. I thought I was the only one called that.
In the Bible, as you know, names come with
meanings,
responsibility. You are not named for nothing, and therefore that holy name you carry comes with a lot of what you would call characteristics that should take you to the next level. But let me also say that at 37, coming from Tana River, the milestones you have achieved so far, the eloquence with which you talk, I say heko.
Thank you. I'm humbled.
That's the good part. Now let's go to the tough part. If appointed as member of the IEBC, what key national values and principles of governance shall guide you in performing your duties as a member?
Thank you for that question, Professor. So I had mentioned that these national values and principles, they are enshrined under Article 10 of the Constitution. Some of them include, I'd already mentioned accountability, transparency, coming from a marginalized community, so I will also mention the issue of affirmative action. So the key values which will guide me in IEBC, you see, IEBC is all about free, fair, credible elections. So if you are to offer Kenyans a free, fair, and credible election, then integrity, accountability, and transparency is everything. So those will be my key guiding national values and principles.
My last question. What would you do if it comes to your knowledge that one of your fellow commissioners is a director in a company that is trading with IEBC, and how would you deal with it if you are appointed as a member?
All right, thank you. So If in the event I find myself in such a situation, if I appointed a commissioner, I think that will be an unfortunate turn of events, because as a commissioner, we ought to know better. Yes, if you now decide to trade with the very organization that you sit in, that already the conflict of interest is illegal, it's outlawed. So if I'm to find myself in that situation, we have, having worked for the EACC, one of the ways of actually fighting corruption includes, sometimes we are allowed to caution people. So as a commissioner, out of collegiality, we'll caution such commissioner and ask him to cease whatever he was doing, so that now if he decides not to change, then we can invite the other actors, including the Anti-Corruption Commission, now to deal with that matter, because it will now be beyond us. But for a start, you can caution your colleague.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. It's not too long since Israel finished high school. Do you have some high school questions?
Sure. Let me take you somewhere outside your area. Then if you don't get it, I'll come back to somewhere in your area. Your civics, just as the chair says, your civics must be alive in you. Which African country was formerly known as Upper Volta? Upper Volta.
Upper Volta, that could be, I'm trying to recall which West African country it is. It's in the...
But we can pass the way they usually say.
I'll take a guess instead
just
of
take
passing.
a guess, yeah.
Okay, let me just guess. It's, I don't know how it's pronounced. Not Nigeria, the other one, Niger.
Let me take you to what should be familiar territory. Who is the youngest permanent secretary currently, and what age is that PS?
Youngest permanent secretary should be, I'll mention 𝐈𝐬𝐫𝐚𝐞𝐥.
I'll try and look for you. Was appointed in the last batch. Okay, maybe I'm not framing it well. I should have said, who is the youngest nominee for PS? Sorry for that.
Right, now that's better. So now that he comes from the coast where he come from, I can now comfortably say it's 𝐈𝐬𝐫𝐚𝐞𝐥.
Thank you, Chair.
Asante.
In his 30s. That's the best I can get. I don't know the exact age, but somewhere in his 30s.
Thank you very much, Honorable Israel 𝐈𝐬𝐲𝐨. It's been a great pleasure talking to you and hearing your perspectives. I don't know whether you have any comment or question to make.
So thank you, Chair, and the entire panel. I don't have any question, maybe just as a parting shot. I will just give an example of the biblical story of David versus Goliath. I believe it's also mentioned in the Quran, or the benefit of Fatuma. I urge this panel just to give this country a David moment. I know the task ahead is not small, but we can tackle this issue of free and fair elections. It has always been a big issue, very protracted elections, but I'm sure as a panel, this distinguished panel, you can give this country a David and Goliath moment. That is food for thought for the panel.
Thank you. You're asking us to slay the giant, and we will try and do it.
Precisely.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please remember to pick your certificates. The notebook is yours and the pen, and if you so wish, the water also. Blessings to you. Na safari njema ukirudi kule kiziwani Lamu.
Sawa. Asante.
Asante. Thank you.